All right, good morning, everybody. This is Mike Drobnis with Opfinity. We're getting ready to start our morning seminar on Microsoft Excel. I want to thank you for joining us. For those of you who are not familiar with our seminars, what we've got going on, we every third Thursday we have a lunch and learn, which is in Fairfax, Virginia, where we typically focus on a topic that involves something from a business level. So we've done everything from Windows versions coming up, as well as phone systems, which we just had, and so forth. On the fourth Friday of every month, our focus is really more on the technology itself. And so today we're going to talk about a basic overview of Microsoft Excel, some features that you may or may not be aware of, and so forth. And then throughout the year, we'll do some more deeper dives into products, whether it's Excel, Word, Outlook, etc. A couple of housekeeping items. We are presenting using Skype for Business. The webinar itself is being recorded, but we have muted everybody and asked that everybody stay muted. If you have any questions, you can do that by using the chat window, which is on the lower left side of your Skype for Business console. If you just put the chat information in there, we'll keep an eye on those questions and answer those as we can as they come up. It's just a lot easier to do that versus having everybody try to chime in over the voice. So at this point, we're going to get started. As I had mentioned, today's on Microsoft Excel. We are doing this as a presentation along with the ability to show everybody in Excel itself. Some of the functions, features we're not going to be able to show you, but we'll be able to describe them. Others we can definitely walk through. So to start off with, we're going to start off with the basics. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Excel, it is a spreadsheet. The screen you're seeing in front of you right now is the 2013 version, but for the most part, with the exception of 2007 and below, you didn't have the ribbon up at the top. But what you're looking at here, you have items on the top: file, home, insert, page layout, formulas, data, review, view, and add-ins. Those are all the main categories. In each one, there's a variety of components, and I'll take you to that screen. And if we look at Microsoft Excel itself, in home is the typical formatting. So everything from the size, the color, the font, bold, italics, etc. Under the insert, you can insert pictures, tables, pivot tables, charts, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Page layout, if you need the orientation of the page to be horizontal versus vertical, you can set background pictures, and so forth. And we're not going to get too much into that because today's focus is really on more the basic operation. Formulas, up until the last two versions of Excel, you had to write your own formulas. You had to know the different functions. Now you can just look them up, click on them, pull it in, and really don't have to worry about creating those. Data, this is great when you're pulling data from other sources, whether it's from websites, from Microsoft Access database. If you want to sort the data from A to Z, you can do it here by clicking on the sort. The following page is the review. You have this in Word as well, where you can do everything from protecting the workbook with passwords. You can add comments if you're sharing the workbook back and forth with each other, spelling, research, thesaurus, etc. And finally, you have the view window. And we'll talk about that now in our presentation because the view is very important. The point of the view is how you look at the screen itself. So as you notice at the bottom, where I'm going to pull up in a second, you've got the ability to zoom in and out. You have the page layout screen, etc. So if we go back to the screen, you'll see that is right down here. If you'd like to see a lot of data on the worksheet, you can click to the left. You're at 68%. Or if you want to get real close, we're at 335, 358%. Then you can see exactly what's on there. The next item we're going to jump to is just printing. And obviously, most times you're creating a spreadsheet, you want to print that spreadsheet. So to do that, there's many ways you are. I'm just going to make that view back to normal. You click on File, go down to Print. Now, the reason this is important to understand is a lot of times a spreadsheet that you receive or that you work on is going to be too large for you to do anything. There's going to be too much data. So what you can do here, in addition to choosing the printer, obviously, you can decide what to print. Do you print the active sheets? Do you want to print the entire workbook? And if so, have you formatted that workbook to handle printing? you want to print on one side of the paper, or if you have a duplex printer, print on both sides of the paper. You can collate if you're doing multiple copies so that it shows up 1, 2, 3, or 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. Choose the orientation of how you want to print, the size of the paper, margins, scaling, etc. We'll get back to this in a few minutes when we talk about page setup. But this is where you decide what and where to print your data. As I mentioned, page orientation, you can choose whether to go portrait or landscape. So if you have a subset of data, when you're in the screen here, you have, say you're working with the data here. If you go to page layout and change orientation to landscape, and if you look at the here, you'll see dotted lines. And on those dotted lines that I'm showing you right here indicates how that data will print on a standard printer, or the printer you've got hooked up. In our case, it's an Epson inkjet. In this case, you have one line going by about 10 across, and it can go down to 47 lines of data in the current view. If we change that orientation to landscape, you'll notice now we don't go down as far because we're printing across the paper, but we have a lot more width. And these dotted lines here are there to show you exactly the print setup. Page margins, basically if you want to keep the data on a piece of paper in the middle, if you notice here, you have the margin right in the middle. If you want to have a wide margin so that it's just really like a column in a newspaper, or a narrow margin so you can fit as much data as possible. All of that can be done by going to Excel, clicking on margins, and choosing those. And of course, you're always welcome to do a custom margin where you can set it right here by going in there. The next screen is print titles, and this is very important because what the print titles is letting you do is say you have a column of data, such as you look on the screen, we have order date, region, rep, item, units, unit cost, total. You want that data to show up right on the top of the printout. And not only do you want it to print out, but if you have multiple pages of data, if you create the spreadsheet, and we'll just go in here and do this, and we call units, cost, total cost across the top, and then you have lists that goes well past the first page, you want that same units, cost, and total cost to appear on every page. So to do that, you're going to go to the page setup, and you can also go to the page layout tab. So when you go to the tab, you have a variety of items here. You can just set print area, which is what we have printing here. You have, as we talked about, the margins, the orientations, as well as every other information. So on that page setup tab, and we'll talk about this now, you can find it in multiple locations. Typically, people find it by going to print first. So you go to File, then Print, and then at the very bottom you have page setup. In the page setup, all in one box, you have, again, you can choose portrait or landscape. You can choose the scaling, so how big do you want it to print, the paper size, the margins that I showed you earlier. You have your header and footer, so maybe at the footer of every page you want to put a copyright information if you're sending over confidential company data. You may want to put a page number if you have multiple pages. All of that can be done here. You can choose some select options here, confidential, page 1. And then on the sheet we were talking about, you can select the print area. So you click on that item, you then go select the print area. You can say rows to repeat at top. So this is where you put your titles. So you go in here, you'd select what rows you want to do, and then pull up that information. And so you'd go in there, select A1 to A5. You're going to have columns repeat at the left. So say your column names are not across the top, but down the side. You go to here, columns to repeat at left, select that information, type it in there as well. Grid lines, if you want your chart to show the lines versus just the data. If you want it to be a black and white print, draft quality, that's more for printing. If you want comments to show, you can have them show at the end of the sheet as displayed of the sheet, or don't show the comments. And then your page order. If you want the data to go down to the second page, then across and down versus over and then down. And that's also in that information. Okay, the next item we're going to talk about are page breaks. Very similar to talking about what we talked about here, which is the setup of data. But you can have a page break determine where you want the next printed page to start. So you may have a bunch of data that goes on 3 pages, but on the third page, it only fills up half a page before another chart would show up. In that case, you can put a page break right in the middle of that chart. So to do that, you get back over to the Microsoft Excel. And you go to the Page Layout tab. And if you look at where you are, so again, if we have a set of data, you go up to breaks. So say you wanted to break at line 25, go to print breaks, insert the page break, and you'll notice that we now have this line that cuts across. That is your page break, and then the next data shows up. So even though we have this dotted line that indicates, and we had a dotted line below, it has now broken that up in half so that the data shows up on that page and then starts the following page with the full page of data. Okay, we already talked about headers and footers, so I won't spend too much time on this, but if you don't want to do it through page setup, you can do that by going to the Page Layout tab again. And you either can go, as we talked about earlier before, by going to the Insert. You can either go on the Page Layout tab, the Insert tab under the text, where you want to select the header or the footer to apply. And again, we pretty much went through that. But the best thing there is if you want titles, page numbers, etc. Okay, so the next item I want to talk about is Sheets tab. Now, in this particular case, we talk about when you have Excel. You'll see down here we have what says Sheet 1. Okay, what Sheet 1 is, we're having a workbook, and say the data on that workbook is related to a variety of inventory. And let's just say you sell toys. So maybe you have Barbie dolls in one location, you have race cars in another, and then you have that information. You want all of that information to be within the same Excel workbook file, but you don't want to have to open all these files up, but you don't want it necessarily on the same page. The way you do that is by adding a sheet. So you're still in the same workbook, but now we have Sheet 1, which we can rename just by double-clicking, and we'll call this Barbie dolls. And then we'll go to Sheet 2, and we'll call this race cars. So now you have that data in both locations, and if you want to get units, cost, and total cost, you could just do a copy, and then jump to the next one and paste that information. Other things you can do with the sheet is you can insert a new sheet, you can delete the sheet, rename if you don't double-click, you can move or copy the sheet. This is important if you have a bunch of data, but you just kind of fill in new numbers. You hit move or copy, you select the sheet that you want, you say create a copy. You'll see now I have Barbie dolls 2. The information is there, but now instead of Barbie dolls, we'll just say other dolls. So now we have 3 sheets of information. Other things you can do, if you'd like, as you see here, you can choose a tab color, make it easier to find what it is you're looking for. So say Barbie dolls, we'll go in here and we'll make that a pink. I don't see one here, so we'll go to more colors. We'll say that's a little bit of a pink. We'll go to race cars. We'll make that a blue. Nothing like sticking with gender stereotypes. And then other dolls, we'll go here and make that green. And now you can see it's a lot easier to figure out, oh, okay, go to the green tab, go to the pink tab, the blue tab, etc. So that's what you can do to help organize your sheets so that you can keep your data separate. At this point, I'll do a quick check to see if we have any questions. I don't believe I saw any pop up. No, not yet, so we'll keep on moving along. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the comment tab on the Skype for Business little panel there. We talked about adding a worksheet, so we can skip over that for right now. Next, we're going to talk about formulas, which is really the whole benefit of an Excel spreadsheet. Sure, it stores data, but it's a lot more useful to utilize formulas. And there's a variety of ways that you can use formulas. And let me show you a few of those. So we'll go back to here to units, cost, and total cost. So let's say we have 500 units, and a cost is, we'll say, 50 cents. Now I want to know what is that total cost? The easiest way to do that is you put in an equal sign, and you can type it here, or you can type it here, and you choose the first column just by clicking on it, and you have A3. You'll notice that's column A, number 3. What do we want to do with A3? We want to multiply it by cost. So to do that, we do a Shift 8, which is your multiplication symbol, and then I say column B. Now you see I'm doing A3 times B3, so the number of units times the cost, and that's going to give me the total cost. I then go and hit Enter, and you'll see our total cost is $250. Now say we need to send 500 units to 15 areas. So I create a column called Areas, and now I put in 15 areas. So I need to know total cost of all areas. I've got a request I'll get to in a minute. And the total cost of all areas is very similar. Again, you go up to the formula bar, you do equal my total cost, which is 250, which is C3. Again, Shift 8 is an asterisk. That's also the multiplication symbol. And then I'm going to say D3. So basically, this column, my total cost, times the number of areas I have for my total cost of all areas. So equals C3 times D3. I hit Enter, and you'll see that my total cost of all areas is $37.50. The reason I'm doing this multiple process is, for example, and again, I'll quickly run through the formula because that was a question that just came through. We have 500 units. We have 50 cents per unit cost. My total cost, and I put an equal. Click the first column, which is the A3. Click the type the asterisk sign, which is B3, and I hit Enter. When I do that, oh, I added something accidentally. So I'll do that again. It's equals A3, Shift 8, B3, Enter, and again, I get that 250. And then here, I added 15 areas. Total cost of all areas is now C3, which is my total cost, against the number of areas, and I get my total cost of all areas. Now, let's say our cost goes up. We got a notice from our vendors. We're raising the cost from 50 cents to 60 cents. Putting that in there, these formulas are all tied together. Everything automatically updates. My total cost updated to 300. My total cost of all areas to 4,500. Now, this is very simplistic, but this is the power of a spreadsheet, is that allows you to pull that data in. And so now, let's say I enter a line, and I'm going to call this widgets. And I'm going to add widgets 2. Now, widgets 2, let's say I have 1,000 units. My cost here, though, is $1.25. And now I need to know the total cost. Well, I could rewrite the whole formula, or I could go to the formula above, do Control-C, bring it down, do a Control-V, and it copies that formula. But what it does is it doesn't copy the formula exactly. It copies it in relation to the other spreadsheets. So here we're saying this item times this item. So when I want to copy it here, it's doing this item times this item. And then again, same thing here. Let's say it's 15 areas. I want the same formula here. I Control-C or copy. I'll do it the other way as well. Right-click, copy. Right-click, paste. Now, with here, the question is, do I want to copy the value, which you see is 4,500, or the formula? I'm going to choose formula. And you'll see now that my total cost of all areas for that particular product is $18,750. So that is the power of formulas. There are a lot of things you can do. You could do a sum, for example. Say I wanted a total cost of all products. I could then go here. I could type @sum, and then parentheses, and say, I want you to sum up all of these items. Now, granted, there's nothing in the other one, so they're just going to be considered a 0. And now you'll see that right now, my widgets and widgets 2, total cost is $23,250. If I were to add a whole another line, call it widgets 3, and then do another 1,000 items, this one here is going to cost me $250. And then I'm going to do 15 areas again, and I copy the formula. You'll notice that everything updated, my total products, my total cost, all of that is tied together. So you only need to do those formulas at one time. Moving on, and I sort of jumped ahead here, but these are functions. These are functions that you want to do, and it could be, give me a sum, an average, count. So, say you have a list of 35 items, and you want the sum of those items, well, it'd be adding up all the items. You want the average, it'll add up all the items and divide it by the number of items. So you want to do that here. So let's just change this to areas here. We'll say one of these is 25, one of these is 10, and the other one's 15. Okay, and so we have, and as you'll notice here, you have functions that you can just pull from here, math and trig. I mean, obviously we're getting some real ones. Well, let's take the average. So if I say I want the average, it's going to pop up and it's saying of what? It already saw that I was in this column, so it said from E3 to E6, everything right above. If I go in here and hit OK, you'll see that the average, which is 15 plus 10 plus 25 divided by 3, is 16.667. So we call that the average column. Say instead I want the count. Give me the count. There, you'll see there's just one item. Other items that you can put together, you can do a sum if certain things take place, and so forth. So you can do a variety of functions. I'm not going to run through all those. That may do that in a more advanced Excel class. But again, another thing you can do with Microsoft Excel. One thing to remember is that if you're using a function, or if you're using a formula, you want to make sure you always put an equal sign in. If you do not, it will not work. Okay, so what are some of the useful functions we just talked about? We have the sum, adds all of the items. We have the average we talked about. You can also do an if statement. So if A2, the data in A2, say 25 is greater than the data in B2, you can have it say it's over budget. Or if it's not, it'll say okay. So you can set that up in the screen to the right, and it does do that. Concatenate, very useful. If you get a spreadsheet of people and you have first names in one column, last names in another, and you want to create a badge that has first and last name, you add a column in, you use the concatenate, say A2 and A3, it automatically turns it into first name, last name. Problem is, if you do that, you need to make sure to add a space. So you actually want to concatenate first name plus a space plus a last name. And then a lookup can look for things in a table, and again, we'll get to more advanced things in another session, but these are some of the things you can do in Excel. We talked about copying data. Again, it's very simple. Say you have every data here, and I want this right now, it's on our Barbie dolls. I want to copy the whole thing over to another worksheet. You just come up here, click on this little triangle, it copies the data, you hit copy. We'll jump over here to other dolls, which already has data, we'll just get rid of that. And then go to the first column and paste, but since I did that, I stopped the copy, so let me jump back. Copy, and then paste. And you can choose paste it as it is, paste just the values, the formulas, we're just going to paste it as it is. And as you notice, our formulas remain on that copy. Okay, so you want to add a column, pretty simple. So we go in here, we want to add a column between widgets 3 and 4. You can click on actually I'm doing a row. You can go here, click insert, it inserts a row. Want to add a column, you click here, click insert, it inserts a column. Moving on, merging cells. So say, for example, you're creating a sheet and you want to put all the cells into one. So say decide that I want to add a title to this, but I don't want to put it on there. I didn't need to add all those rows, so I'll delete all but one. But I don't want to have it, so if I start typing here, title of this project, it'll stay in that cell. So when I go to type in the next cell, author, you're not going to see that. Say instead I wanted to make it equal to the all the way across. You have the ability to what's called merge the cells. So you right click on it, and let me quickly do this. Let's see. All right, so we're using the merge and center button. It used to be in the drop down, but I'm not seeing it there. But if we go to our home tab, and you see there's a merge and center option here, you can merge the cells that way. So if you notice that, we'll pull this in here, merge and center, and you saw that all those cells just got merged. Unfortunately, I didn't click the first one, so I'll try that again. And you'll notice that the cells now have been merged across so that the data remains there. Charts, very important data. So let's go back to here, and we've got jump back to the Barbie doll since that data is still around. We have the ability to utilize charts. And so what charts do is obviously makes things a lot easier for people to look at when you're looking at the data. So to get a chart, you want to go to Insert. From Insert, you have the option to choose a variety of different charts. You have column charts, bar charts, stock, surface, radar charts, etc. You can also go here and click on a recommended chart, which will take a look at the data that you have and put that here. So let's just say we'll go with this recommended chart, which is a clustered column. As you'll notice, it has taken the data and pulled that data off in a chart itself. It's highlighted widgets as blue, widgets 2 as orange, widgets 3 as gray. And as you'll notice, it's pulled the data across, and it's just because of the way it's set up, and it can show you the total cost of all areas. In that chart here, this is all the areas. Since number 4 and 2 are related to the cost in areas and they're not actual data, they're actual formulas, it doesn't have much to show you. And then obviously 3 and 1 are related to the units, the cost, etc. So now let's go into units, and instead of 1,000, we'll make it 10,000. As you'll notice, the data there has changed. Here, the whole left sidebar has increased, obviously to keep the axis and the size of the chart at a certain height. The cost has changed exponentially on this side because of the amount we put in there, as well as the total cost because that's obviously changing as a result. So if we add this up to 15,000, you'll notice that while the numbers have changed because we have to keep growing larger and larger to accommodate the total cost in the same chart, the data continues to grow based on that. And right now, obviously, widgets 3 has the smallest amount. But if we add that up and bring that up to 11,000, now all the charts are going to show relatively equal, with the exception of the last one because the total cost changes based on the unit cost itself. So that's the basics. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to go through some tips and tricks. So 1, freeze panes, very important. What this allows you to do is if you have a column or row of data that you're going to scroll through, you want to freeze the pane so that the data shows up. So for example, if I jump back, because the graph here will jump back to other dolls, say for example, I need this data here to always stay at the top and I've got data that runs all the way down the screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the View tab, I'm going to go to Freeze Panes, and I can either say freeze top row, freeze the first column, but I'll choose freeze panes. I've got the panes here that would be frozen. And as you'll notice, right now that first row is frozen because the rest of the data continues to scroll underneath it. You can unfreeze the panes by going here. You can freeze the first column as well, so that when you scroll the data to the side, that first column stays so you know exactly what's there. Obviously, it's not going to show as well on this particular presentation due to the fact that we don't have a ton of data there. But that allows you to do that. And it makes working with that formula and with that data that much easier. Fast navigation, again, really depends on you having a lot of data, but when you use the control button, you can jump to the edges of the different screens. So if I put it up here at number 1, I hold down the control button, hit the right arrow, it's taking me all the way to XFD. Obviously that is a long way across. Go back, control, hit the left arrow button, and it brings me back to A, which you can see is highlighted here. Same thing with the up and down, up, down, to the data that you're going to. Moving on to the next item, transposing data. This is very important if you have data that's across the top and you want the data to go down the side. So you get a variety of data, and then you need to pull that in there. So you can do that. Let's see what data we have that we can utilize. So what I'm going to do here is just copy this data, copy it here, put it in race cars. Okay, so you see that we have, in fact, the data we've pulled over from the other chart. And what we're going to do is if you go to the Home tab, you want to copy what you want to transpose. So we have this data here. We're going to go to copy it. And on the Home tab, you have the option to paste. And you can do a variety of things. You can do a paste special, which gives you all the options. So as you see here, we've got formulas, values, formats, comments, validation, etc. You can also do things based on borders, column width, etc. So you can do that with a special. Then you have the individuals that are here. So you have paste, formulas, number formatting. You've got the option of transpose. We'll talk about column width and borders. So say I do this and I hit transpose. Oh, can't paste it here because it's the same location. I'll paste it down here. When I say transposed, you'll see that now the units cost all areas, the total cost of all areas is down the side, all widgets is across the top. This may be the case where you've created a spreadsheet with a bunch of data to begin with, and then realize that you're going to be looking at the data of a lot more widgets and want to scroll down the side as opposed to down the bottom. But that's what pasting and transposing does. Inputting values. There's two ways to look at this. So the inputting values, you got to realize with a spreadsheet is that sometimes it doesn't understand the point of that value. This is very particular in a case of a postal code, especially if you live up in the New England area. The reason is postal codes up there start with a 0. So I'm going to put in 02072. I hit enter. Well, it says you don't need a 0 because 2072 is a number, 0272 is not. So you can do one of two things. You can go in here and put a, I can't think of the word, but an apostrophe, there we go, right in front of the number. And by doing that, it'll keep whatever that number is. So I put it in there with the 0, though. So therefore, it keeps that data. But the other option you can do is say you're doing a whole spreadsheet of codes, and I put in the 0 there. It's hidden. I highlight the Q. I go down here to format cells. I choose here that I'm dealing with a number, and I can choose decimal places, or I can go to what's called special and say I'm doing a zip code. And by doing that, it knows it has to be 5 digits. If I hit OK, you've got that 5-digit zip code that will always appear. Say I'm doing a social security number. Let's just make one up. Same thing to them. To Excel, it looks like just a random number. But if we're maintaining social security numbers, which nobody should really be doing, we'll go here to special. We'll hit social security number, hit OK, and it automatically will format into that social security number. So again, when you're inputting values, you have the ability to set values based on number of decimal points, special types of components, etc. Another tip to realize is the ability to proofread with the audio. What this allows you to do is say you have a bunch of data, you've taken it from a document in front of you, and you typed it all into your spreadsheet. You want to be able to compare the data while looking at that spreadsheet. You can do that by proofreading with audio. I don't believe this is going to work over the presentation, but I'll show it to you. So I'm going to choose this option here. And up here at the top, you have the ability to choose speak cells, right here. You can say stop speaking. So if I hit speak cells, it's now going to read that to me. I don't think I can hear it through the system because I've got a headphones on here. I'll go up and do that. Now, a lot of people are saying to me, well, that's great. I have this here, but, where do I find that? Because most people, when you get Excel, aren't going to find that. To do that, you have to add it to your toolbar. To add it to the toolbar, you go to File, go down to Options. You can choose your Quick Access toolbar. Choose your commands from All Commands. And you're going to go all the way down to the S's for Speak. And choose Speak Cells and click Add. Obviously, I already have it in here. Speak cells there, speak cells by column, by row. So if you want it to be able to speak just straight across the row or down a column, as opposed to right there, you choose those as well. You hit Add, you hit OK. They'll show up at the top, and now you can have the data be read back to you. All right, so I think we're wrapping up here. So I'll give it a few minutes to see if anybody has any specific questions that I can answer for you. So if you do, please complete the question item on the left-hand side. All right, we've got a couple of questions coming in. Somebody was talking about saving the data. Obviously, one of the great things about Excel is that you can save it, but what happens if you don't want people to make changes to that data? You can go to Protect Workbook. You can either encrypt it with a password. You can protect a current sheet. You can restrict access. Who has the ability to do it? But in order to do that, you have to have a rights management server, which is more an enterprise level, but can be done. When you save, you can just click Save As, choose the location. When you choose that, go to Browse. And here's a great thing, is you can save it to Excel, but say you want to send someone a document, but they can't touch or change at all. You can actually select the option for PDF. And it's right down here. And now it'll be saved as an Adobe file. This is only available in the latest versions. So if you don't have the latest version of Office, then you need to upgrade in order to get that. Now, there are other options available, but that'll be for another webinar. So that was a question about how to handle that. I saw a couple more questions come in. Let me quickly pull those up. There's a question about going over formulas for multiplying and dividing. I'll do that quickly. So we'll go back to Excel. Question was, how do we multiply and divide? So say we have a total cost of all areas here, and now I need to know how much money is going to come from the bank, and how much money is going to come from cash, and I want to do that 50% of each. So I'll go to bank, or actually we'll do 30% of bank, and then 70% cash. So to do that, I'm going to put in again, I'm going to click in the formula, I'm going to type equal, I'm going to choose the money, which is F3. To divide, I'm going to use the slash, and I'm going to say I want that divided by, really should be doing multiplication for percentages, but somebody asked about dividing. So say I want to divide the money, here, we'll do multiplication first. So say I want that 30% of that, so I do multiply it by 0.30. Okay, and then the rest of it, I'm going to do the same formula, and I'm going to click on the item and multiply it by 0.70. So there you go, that's how we can break that up in there. Dividing is just the same thing. You go ahead and hit equals. Say divide the area, and I need to divide those areas into 5 managers. Put the divide sign, say the number 5, and we know now that 5 managers will each have 5 areas. So I hope that helps. That's how you multiply and divide using Excel. Let's see if there are any other questions. All right, I don't see anything else. I'll give it another second or so. Just a quick reminder again, our next Lunch and Learn will be on August on the 4th Thursday, which I believe is the 20th. At that time, we will be doing a Lunch and Learn on file sharing and sync solutions. On the 4th Friday, which should be the 28th, I believe, will be a social media, social networking. We haven't really finalized that, but it'll be in our newsletter. If you're not getting our newsletter, of course, you can go to the Opfinity website and complete that there, and you'll get it. We don't send out a lot of data typically, Beginning of the month, we have a newsletter, and then during the middle of the month, we'll send a reminder about our events. So if there are no other questions, I'll leave it at that. I appreciate everybody taking the time this morning to come out here. We will, in fact, put this recording up on our YouTube channel for future use. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.